First name Google, last name girl, that's an oxymoron. This first always lazy, do no evil. Second does a ton. Do no evil?
Here's a truffle, that's her name, she's Google Girl, queen of the zombies. She'll add a thought to her name every time she comments. She gets every quote in a zombie game. Look who wears Marty pants. My name Gus?
Ain't no fuss, that's her name, she's Google Girl, queen of the zombies.
Queen of the zombies!
Hey everybody, welcome to the Dreamer's Edge podcast. If you're wondering what the hell you just heard, that was our prize for Google Girl, winner of our zombie contest over at billydoo.com. She won a movie review of her choice, as well as a little ditty from us on the Dreamer's Edge podcast. I hope you enjoyed Google Girl. Congratulations again on your promotion to Queen of the Zombies. Just so you know, the voices you just heard are those of
Pierre-Olivier?
And Nicholas.
And I'm Dimitri, webmaster of TheDreamersEdge.com, and today we're going to talk about Marvel at the movies. And we're going to get started right away with our little patented list, which I want to point out only includes theatrical releases. So, Man-Thing from Sci-Fi, not going to touch that. Or Sci-Fi, I'm sorry. Sci-Fi. Yeah, they changed the spelling of the Sci-Fi channel in the United States to S-Y-F-Y, which to me spells Sci-Fi.
It's the Sci-Fi channel.
It's so ridiculous.
I know, well, they probably wanted to trademark and copyright the name, so they changed
and they can't trademark sci-fi.
Yeah. But anyway, and we're not going to talk about the Roger Corman stuff. Instead, we're going to talk about...
First release in 1989, The Punisher.
History has taught us that actually Dolph Lundgren, the Punisher, is the best Punisher ever to reach the screen, because Thomas Jane Punisher and Punisher Warzone, yeesh.
It's pretty far in my memory. All I remember is the costume who looked completely goofy, and...
Did it?
Yeah.
Why?
It was the Punisher costume, but in the real world it looked completely goofy.
Oh, no, actually he
some
didn't.
Changes.
He didn't have the skull at all.
Oh.
He was just wearing a bulletproof jacket. I think you're thinking of Thomas Jane Punisher.
Okay, that's probably it then.
Yeah, we'll get to it later.
Next, 1998, Blade.
Yeah, 10 years later.
It's surprising that they would have gone with Blade instead of one of their more known franchises, although maybe they didn't want to risk it.
I get the feeling that that's what happened. I think it must have been really complicated to coordinate a known franchise. For example, the X-Men movie, which at the time was called Wolverine and the X-Men, stayed in development hell throughout the 90s, whereas Blade, nobody cares.
Yeah, and yet they came out with a really good movie. The first good comic book movie in a long time at that point. It really revived, I think, the comic books.
I think so.
At the movies.
The action was great. It wasn't like just cartoony superhero. It was just really good action, comparable to any other action movie you could see out there. And it was pretty true to the character.
Yeah, no, David Goyer, who wrote Blade, did a terrific job creating that character. He would later on do The Dark Knight and Batman Begins. The story itself has some weird stuff going on in it, like, oh, Blade is a daywalker. Oh, he's so special. We must get him. And then, later on in the scene, you have Deacon Frost, the bad guy. He's walking in the sun going, oh, yeah, I got sunscreen. I was like, then why is a daywalker such a big deal?
Because putting on sunscreen is such a pain.
It's a hassle.
I know, it messes up his hair. At least he didn't sparkle.
Next, in 2000, we have X-Men.
Very good follow-up to Blade. I mean, I think they did a good job of making a movie that wouldn't just be enjoyable to people who knew the characters. Everyone in the States or in Canada knows Batman and Superman, whether or not they like comic books. But really, I mean, the only people who really know who the X-Men are the people who read comic books until these movies. So they couldn't really come out and just say, well, okay, you all know the X-Men, whatever, let's just make a movie. They had to do something that would relate to everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I remember a great scene, that movie. It's summer in New York, but when you go to see Wolverine, he's in Canada, and it's the middle of winter, and people are fighting in the bar for beer. That makes me laugh every time I see the movie.
Oh, that's how I grew up. That's what we do in Canada. I was 6 years old fighting for my first beer. Representing.
Alright, next we have Blade 2 in 2002.
Yeah, the sequel to Blade, as some people might have guessed.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was Guillermo del Toro, who would later on do Hellboy and
Pan's Labyrinth.
Yeah, and Pan's Labyrinth. He brought his sensibility to it, you can tell. It was a much more fairy tale-like atmosphere for Blade. It still had that, nightclub atmosphere that's very Blade, but...
Which one was that?
That's the one with the Uber vans that are genetically engineered.
Yeah. Okay. I do not remember that.
It's probably because I roofied you afterwards.
And on that roofie joke, we moved to Spider-Man in 2002.
Tobey Maguire. I mean,
Yeah, some people were complaining, he's not an action star. It's Tobey Maguire. He's not supposed to play an action star. He's supposed to play Peter Parker, and that's a perfect role for him.
yeah.
I get what you're saying, and I feel a little bit the same way, but at the same time, I am one of those people who went, ugh, Tobey Maguire?
But Spider-Man is supposed to be like that a bit, where it was thrust upon him. He's not supposed to look the part, of a superhero.
It's a delicate balance. You have to respect the character, and the character is a dweeb, and you have to pick somebody who's going to be a dweeb. But at the same time, he's also, wish fulfillment. And I want to be that guy.
But that's what you get when he turns into Spider-Man. Once he puts on the suit, I mean, you don't see Tobey Maguire anymore. You see the special effects, which were really well done. And
But that voice, because Spider-Man talks all the time, and that squeaky voice, man. I don't want to have that squeaky voice.
I didn't really mind the voice.
Yeah?
And one thing I minded was the Green Goblin costume. That
really?
was horrible.
Really? What was wrong with it?
It didn't look like the Green Goblin at all. I know they had to make it modern and make it look like, I guess, armor, because he was building a thing for the army, but the mask with the mouth that was open all the time, it just looked horrible. And that was not really the Green Goblin for me. It was pretty ugly.
Yeah, no, that didn't bother me, ironically.
Now we have Daredevil in 2003.
Ah, and this is where it starts going wrong. It's like, oh... Because the guy who did Daredevil, the director, he is a huge Daredevil fan. Like, he's a maniac about this stuff. And this confirmed to me what I always believed. Because, back in the day, fans were always going like, well, they still do today. It's like, why can't they take somebody who loves the franchise? I know, every fan in my mind is a surfer. Sorry about that. But they're like, oh, why can't they have to love the franchise? If they don't love the franchise, they can't do a good movie. They have to be a fan like us. It's like, no, because... he's a creator, not a fan. The fan's job is to make it real in their imagination. The creator's job is to make it real on the screen. It's not the same job, you know what I mean?
But also, I mean, the director's job is to bring in not just to the comic book fans, but to more people. He needs to be able to reach other people than the people who are already fans. Especially from an economic standpoint, the fans are going to go anyway. They're probably going to go 2 or 3 times. If they hate it, they're going to go even more so they can complain more. Right?
Yeah.
So they need to reach an audience that aren't fans.
Mm.
If you take a fan and he just does what the fans like, first, it's not going to make a good movie. And second, he's not going to reach enough people.
Boy, did he not make a good movie. Oh. And you can tell that these were the decisions of a fan, not a director. Because, first of all, he cast Ben Affleck as Daredevil. And I'm sorry, Ben Affleck does not do action hero. Mm-hmm. Ben Affleck does, streetwise ingenue. To the corner because I made a big mistake in my life, but I'm a good guy. That's what Ben Affleck does, Yeah. And he's really good at it. But action
That's
hero...
not Daredevil.
No. But he looks exactly like Matt Murdock. You could tell, like, this is a director who was putting the lens of a fan going like, oh my god, that's Matt Murdock. Yeah, but can he act the part? That's Matt Murdock. And, Elektra Nachos? First of all, the fact that they gave her the last name Nachos and did not think that would distract us.
Yeah, I went there, Marvel was on the streak, I went there saying, it's going to be a good movie too, Marvel knows what they're doing, and, oh god, that was horrible.
And you know what I hate about Daredevil especially? Is that every time you say to a fan that you don't like the Daredevil movie, and I tend to be really nice about it, because I'm not the kind of guy who goes like, oh, this movie was crap, it bleeped my child, and I'm not that kind of guy. When a movie's bad, it's just bad. It doesn't really anger me in any way. But it's like, I don't really like the Daredevil movie. Every time the fans go like, is it because the Kingpin is black? I was like, oh.
Oh my god.
It's like, no, it's because Bullseye was Irish.
Alright, now we have X2, X-Men United, came out in 2003.
I always thought the title was actually X Squared X-Men United. Making a pun with the squared, like the exponential, but also like X-Men Squared and X-Men United, like they're squared against each other as bitter enemies, but now they're united. I thought that was the joke of the title.
Oh.
I never got that.
We just saw the square and figured, X times X, I don't get it.
No, they did a great job fleshing out the bad guys in that one. Because that's what makes X-Men X-Men, is that the bad guys aren't bad guys. They just have a different political view, and it's a completely defensible view.
Yeah, that's always what I liked about X-Men, is it creates a conflict that you can believe in. They don't accept how things work, and they try to change it, and they go about it the wrong way.
Yeah.
And it's exemplified in Magneto.
Yeah, well, especially back in the 80s, the way Chris Claremont did it, because Magneto was sort of a mainstay. Mm-hmm. And the way he treated it was that he's not a bad guy. He's sometimes the enemy, he's sometimes their friend, because, depending on the situation, one approach might be more valid than the other, and that's sort of the thing. Like, sometimes you need Malcolm X, sometimes you need Martin Luther King. And I find X2 really, or X squared, really captured that super well, because at the end, like, when Pyro, well, it's a little spoiler alert, but I'm sure you've seen the movie at this point, does his dramatic turn, it's heartbreaking, but at the same time, I'm placing myself in his shoes, and I think I would have done the same thing,
Yeah. After that came Hulk in 2003 again.
I like that one. I mean, I know a lot of people did not, but I found it was a nice approach to Hulk, where it wasn't just Hulk smash. It's a movie that was focused a lot on Bruce Banner and why he becomes the Hulk.
One of the key things, just to add to what you were saying, is that Bruce Banner and the Hulk are the same character. They're the same person. And the movie treated them that way, which I think that's so much more traumatizing and that's so much more moving, the fact that these two extremes in terms of personality, they're very much the same person.
Yeah.
And it did really well. Like, fans keep saying, like, oh, I hated it, therefore it flopped. No, it did better than Incredible Hulk, the movie.
Well, Ang Lee is just an awesome director.
And next we have The Punisher. Came out in 2004.
That's the Thomas Jane one. It's actually another movie that was made by a fan, which makes it all the more baffling, some of the key changes he's made that don't really make sense. He turned the Punisher from a veteran into an ex-cop. Which was like, no, the whole idea of the Punisher is that he's using a philosophy and an approach to life that he learned in times of war and applying it to fighting crime in a time of peace. And that makes him a madman. So if you make him an ex-cop, you sort of lose the only thing that makes Punisher different from Riggs in Lethal Weapon or McClane,
But I find that's a mistake that a lot of fans make, where they don't understand why something works. When they talk about the comic books or whatever, they're going to grab onto certain bits that they really, really like, and they won't understand the links to something else that they don't like. Punisher fighting crime in the way he does and being a veteran, they don't realize that link and that it doesn't work if it changes.
Yeah, it's like they don't see the forest for the trees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the trees are made of infinite message boards filled with really, really insane comments. Yeah, and this is this really violent movie, too. I hated the Punisher character in that. Everybody dies, like, 6 times in there. Like, nobody can die once. Like, there's one woman in the movie who gets shot, then falls off a bridge, then gets impaled on something on a railroad, so she gets hit by a train afterwards. And it's like, this is a Roadrunner cartoon. Like, this is not a movie.
No, in a Roadrunner cartoon, she would have run in the air for a while before falling.
And she would have just walked it off afterwards.
Yeah.
Fine.
She would have held up a sign.
That is true.
With yikes.
Yeah, the difference is I was holding up that sign at that point.
In 2004, Spider-Man 2.
Spider-Man 2 is amazing because it captures the spirit of Marvel. It doesn't just capture the spirit of Spider-Man, it totally captures the spirit of Marvel. Like, this is a guy who can't get his stuff together and who ends up saving the world with compassion and fighting bad guys who are not evil, they're just mad, which is a really recurring theme with Stan Lee. Everybody's good-hearted but just not very good at life, And that's totally what Stan Lee did that made Marvel Marvel, and Spider-Man 2 is all about that, and it just captures it flawlessly.
Yeah, well, I think that applies to both their heroes and their villains, where all their heroes and all their villains are always conflicted. You can always identify a bit with both of them, whereas in DC it's really more icons versus icons. It's one side represents a single idea and the other represents the antithesis, and then they fight. Whereas in Marvel, it's always more subtle. It's always more nuanced than in DC.
Yeah. 2004 still, Blade Trinity.
Warp, warp,
I actually kind of like this movie. It wasn't as good as Blade or Blade 2. It was different, but it was a fun movie, I found. It wasn't a great movie, but I enjoyed watching it.
The Night Stalkers were pretty damn cool, I
Yeah.
have to say. Yeah.
It's a leave your brain at the door movie. If you don't think too much about it, it's a fun movie.
Yeah, I think my main qualm with it is that Dracula, the big bad guy, who's, Dracula, Edward Cullen looks more threatening than Dracula. That was my main qualm, but that movie was an unholy mess largely because of Wesley Snipes. Wesley Snipes had no respect for David Goyer, who was a second-time director, his first time movie being a completely independent movie, and Wesley Snipes would just sort of do whatever, whenever, and they had to rewrite the script around whatever they would do. There were like some really hilarious scenes when you know that's what happened. Like there's a scene where they bust Blade out of jail. Then he's in the corridor and they're surrounded, and then he just like goes into the roof, and you have Ryan Reynolds turn and go like, "Okay then." And it turns out that was actually Ryan Reynolds saying "okay then," because that was not at all planned. And they were like, "What's going on?"
If you didn't like this one, the next one is going to be worse. Elektra in 2005.
Oh god.
Did we all see this together?
No.
I know it was together, but I saw it and it's an unholy mess.
Every line was so cliche that in the theater I started calling out the lines before they would happen. I was just so bored.
All right. In 2005 still, we have Fantastic Four.
I don't even think I saw this one until recently on TV.
Yeah.
I never saw it
No,
in theaters.
I didn't want to see it in theaters either.
Fantastic Four has never really attracted me, even as a comic, so even less as a movie.
It's because it's such a dated concept, Fantastic Four. It really belongs in the Silver Age. It's very 60s. You know, when science was cool and awesome and there's no conflict because science will solve everything. And radiation gives you powers. And I think if you're going to make a movie of that, you have to set it in that era.
Right.
Well, one thing I didn't like about the movie, when you watch superhero movies, you know, you kind of look at the superhero saying, you know, oh, I'd like to be that. You know, those powers are cool. This is awesome. He has superpowers. He does stuff with it. You go into Fantastic Four movie, and 3 of the 4 guys are like, we don't want these powers. They're just a burden on us.
In fairness, one of them has a good reason.
Yeah, one of them has a good reason. The other 2 don't. The only person that actually lives it up is like the Human Torch, and he's fun. You know, his scenes with him there, he's having fun. It's great. He's like, wow, I'd like to be him. He's a fun superhero. The other 3 are like mourning. He's like, oh, we have superpowers. What are we going to do? This is the worst day of our lives. It's like, this is not fun for me.
I have to say, Chris Evans nailed the Human Torch. Because the Human Torch is supposed to be a prick. And he plays that prick that, like, in real life, you'd see that guy and go like, oh, what a prick. I so want to go to a party with that guy.
Yeah, I agree. Next, 2006, X-Men The Last Stand. Way to take a great franchise you had in X2 and have characters that are established and just completely destroy them in the first hour of the movie, and then you just end up with a giant mess at the end.
I know, they screwed the franchise. You cannot make a movie after that one.
Yeah.
Because all the good characters are either killed off or just, you know, mangled in terms of personality beyond recognition.
Yeah.
But you know what the story behind that movie is? Matthew Vaughn, who did Kick-Ass, was supposed to be directing it. And he did all the early work for it. And he confessed in an interview that he's not the biggest X-Men fan in the world. You know, he thinks a lot of it is silly. Like, he likes the Dark Phoenix saga until it goes into space, and then that sort of loses him.
Yeah.
And
Admittedly, that wasn't the best move.
But, you know, the fans went crazy. It was like, oh, how can they let this hack direct movie? The fans put so much pressure that they booted Matthew Vaughn off the movie. Mm-hmm. Again, Matthew Vaughn, who did Kick-Ass.
Yeah.
And so they brought Brett Ratner, who did Rush Hour 2 and 3.
Oh,
and
God.
1. This movie was a catastrophe, and you can blame Fox as much as you want, but fans, you're the ones to blame. If you had just let Matthew Vaughn express himself, express genuine concerns, and input a new vision onto the franchise instead of losing your bleep over a silly little comment over, I don't like aliens in X-Men, maybe you would have gotten a good movie.
There has to be something behind the scenes that made so many bad movies come out after so many good ones. Something must have changed. I don't know what. But it can't be a coincidence that you have like 4 or 5 of the best comic book movies followed by 4 or 5 of just crap.
Well, I think they rushed into production. I mean, these were all movies that were sort of like, oh, comic books are in, let's pop them out. Mm-hmm. You know, these were not movies that, unlike X-Men or Spider-Man, were years and years and years into development.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
X-Men 3, you know, they could have waited for Bryan Singer to come back. He was busy doing Superman, but after he was done Superman, he wanted to do X-Men 3, and they didn't let him. And he went like, no, we need to get this out now. They're like, well, you know, good stories take time to tell.
Yeah.
Or maybe that's just an excuse I say to myself as a writer because I procrastinate a lot.
Your editors heard that a lot.
Well, keeps going with Ghost Rider in 2007.
You know what saves it? Nicolas Cage.
Yes, I agree.
Say what you will about his choice of movies. Like, the man will go like, do I have superpowers in it? Yes, I'm playing it. It's like, do you want to see a script? Superpowers, right? But he never gives a bad performance. The man is a whirlwind on screen. He's so much fun. And Ghost Rider, he's like drinking candy martinis and like popping out crazy lines. He's awesome.
Yeah. But the rest of the movie is, yeah, okay.
That was really bad.
Well, going from bad to worse with Spider-Man 3 in 2007.
That was an unholy mess. They tried to do too much in a single movie. There were too many villains. There were too many plots. It was too much, and at some point you get lost. It looks like they tried to cram 2 or 3 movies into one, and it just did not work.
Yeah. Venom is one of my favorite bad guys from Spider-Man, and it was great to see him in the last 20 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, well, you know what happened with that is Sam Raimi does not care for Venom. He's an old school Spider-Man fan, dicto Stan Lee era. And for him, Venom represents the beginning of the modern era and the beginning of him not caring about Spider-Man. You wanted the Sandman and Vulture. The studio, Sony Pictures, really wanted Venom for obvious reasons. He's a fan favorite.
Yeah.
So he put it in there sort of half-heartedly, sort of like, here's your Venom. And you could tell that he doesn't care about anything that makes Venom Venom. Because as played by Topher Grace, who actually was a good casting choice, he's just sort of a little jerk.
Yeah.
As opposed to, the comic book Venom, who's actually a conflicted character who sort of just took a bad end because... well, Spider-Man actually did screw him over once too many.
Yeah. And that was not Venom, so, I even put him in the movie if you're going to do that. And also the worst scene ever in any superhero movie, emo Peter Parker dancing on the street.
I like it.
What the hell was that all about? It made no sense. It's just... okay.
I mean, yeah, it fits into this series of movies that were... ruined by wanting to get it out to please the fans.
Right.
Where the earlier ones were worked on and they had more freedom because there were fewer expectations. Then all of a sudden, it's like you have a bunch of movies that come out and that don't really do it, and they're just riding the wave.
Yeah.
And they broke it.
Yeah. Well, continuing with the wave break, in 2007 we have Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer.
Okay, no, that's an unholy mess.
When you're not looking forward to seeing Jessica Alba on screen, there's a problem there.
Yeah, I don't like her as a blonde, I have to say, though. I mean, like, her natural hair color is obviously black. She's Hispanic. And that's the look that works for her,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Following up, 2008, Iron Man.
Good comeback. I had given up on comic book movies, and then Iron Man came out. And that was a surprisingly good movie considering how many flops they had in the previous 3 years.
This is the first Marvel-produced movie. The string of bad movies we've just mentioned sort of made Marvel realize, like, we're going to do it ourselves. We respect our characters. They're ours. So Marvel Studios was created, and this was the first Marvel Studio movie. This was the first movie that was actually made by the people who published the comics. And it shows, it shows. It's made by creators who go like, what makes Iron Man, not what makes the fans like Iron Man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they really captured the Tony Stark personality well.
The acting really helped.
Yeah, and spoiler alert, but at the end when he doesn't hesitate to really reveal himself as Iron Man, I mean, that's Tony Stark. He's an arrogant bastard, and he doesn't care who knows. Right?
Absolutely. That was a great bit as well, where it's sort of like, this is who our character is. Yeah. He's such a larger-than-life, arrogant person that he won't even respect the conventions of the genre.
Yeah.
When they announced Jon Favreau, who did Swingers and Made, and all of that, everybody gone, really? Jon Favreau? Swingers? And I saw Zathura, and when I saw Zathura, I was like, no, Jon Favreau, yes, because Zathura is a kid's adventure movie, the sequel to Jumanji, and what he did with it is he put the characters before the spectacle. And I was like, if he can do that to a superhero movie, that would be brilliant. And that's exactly what he did with Iron Man. You practically don't see Iron Man. You just see Tony Stark all the way.
And they have some of the best scenes ever. When his armor is getting pulled off and Potts walks in, I mean, that's just priceless. That's a wonderful scene.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, well, Gwyneth Paltrow and Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah,
together, like
such
that's-
chemistry
yeah.
in that movie.
Same year, 2008, The Incredible Hulk.
That's the second Marvel produced movie.
So what happened? That movie was just, I can punch harder than you. That's what I remember from that movie. I can punch harder than you. No, I can't punch harder than you. And that was the last 45 minutes of the movie.
It's not even a superhero movie either, because I know a lot of fans were like, finally, we're going to get a Hulk superhero movie instead of that emo crap that was Ang Lee's the Hulk, thinking bad. But he didn't even do that either. He did a series of homages to monster movies. There's homages to King Kong, to Monster from Blue Lagoon, to Godzilla, to Frankenstein, all of that. He did even references to Reanimator. As a horror fan, I appreciate the first hour and a half and going like, okay, I get what you're doing. It's kind of cute. And then that hour kicks in where it's just two monsters fighting CGI on top of that. And I'm like, oh, make it stop.
Yeah. You know, he saved someone by clapping his hands. That was suspense right there. Seriously, that movie made me angry.
Yeah, we gonna smash that.
You turn green!
Almost. I almost smashed the movie, but it was not mine, so I would have had to reimburse the DVD. Same year, 2008, Punisher Warzone.
The thing with Punisher Warzone is it confirmed to me that the Punisher does not a good movie make. And there is a specific reason to it when you think about it. Punisher was created in the 60s as a sort of Marvel's attempt to bring into comics the vigilante heroes that were sort of popping out in the late 60s and early 70s, like Charles Bronson's Death Wish and all of that.
Okay.
And so Punisher as a character actually comes from movies. So adapting this comic book character and bringing him back to movies, just coming back full circle, is like, I can rent Death Wish. This movie, I'm sorry, go on.
Was that a Marvel made?
Yeah, that was Marvel. Kasim and I reviewed it for this site. It's on a podcast. You can find it on the main page. thedreamersedge.com/multimedia.
Moving into 2009, only one movie that year. X-Men Origins, Wolverine.
I'm the only one who saw it, aren't I?
I saw reviews of it, and I decided never to go see that movie ever.
Yeah, it's a movie that needed a second draft. Because what happened is it was filmed during the writer's strike. During a writer's strike, when you make a movie, you cannot deviate from the script. And you cannot change the script. So, this movie was essentially an incomplete draft. That's the same thing that happens with Transformers 2. And they filmed it, and they went like, well, that's what we gotta film. And again, because Fox needed to pop it out instead of, waiting till the strike is over. Wow. And you can tell, because there are so many scenes that would have been so easy to streamline in there. Like, there's one scene that's freaking hilarious where Gambit shows up, and he's next to Wolverine, and he helps Wolverine defeat a bad guy. But then Wolverine has to have the final showdown alone, so they need to get rid of Gambit. So Wolverine goes like, Gambit, go help the other guys. So Gambit goes to help the other guys. Wolverine has his little action thing alone. And then Gambit reaches his destination to help the other guys, and the other guy just, we don't need your help. And he goes like, okay, well, I'll go back to Wolverine. So
That's horrible.
it's like, structurally, you could tell. It's like, these are all problems. Second draft, baby. That's all you needed.
I guess. Only movie that came out last year, Iron Man 2.
I'm just starting to realize I haven't seen a lot of movies recently.
This is a little bit of my concerns with the Marvel Studios, where they went, Marvel does big crossovers, especially right now. They're in that big, like, Dark Reign, Civil War, all of that. They're like, let's bring that to the movies. And so Iron Man 2 was sort of usurped halfway into the movie and became this big Avengers the movie trailer. Where, Nick Fury comes in with the Black Widow and they have their own storyline that don't relate in any shape or form to Iron Man's story. And I'm watching that going like, I was looking forward to the Avengers movie, but, not during Iron Man. So, if you have any questions, comments, you want to share with us what your favorite Marvel movie is, or which is the one you'd look forward to, write us at mail@thedreamersedge.com or post a comment at thedreamersedge.com. We read them, we respond to them, we make fun of a couple of people. See you next time! Google girl, queen of the zombies. Do you remember girl in the park, on the beach, in the Moon, turn into a panther. Grrr!
Dimitri, what the hell are you doing?